Welcome to today's in-service by Nutrition Care Systems. The topic is the Dietary Guidelines for Older Adults. The 9th edition of the Dietary Guidelines was published in December of 2020. Upon completing this in-service, you will be able to 1. Understand the dietary guidelines, 2. Gain understanding of the guidelines listed in Chapter 6 for older adults, and 3. Describe special considerations regarding older adults. The newest addition is Make Every Bite Count with the Dietary Guidelines. The Dietary Guidelines are developed jointly by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The guidelines are revised every 5 years. The Dietary Guidelines have built upon previous editions and evolved as scientific knowledge has grown. They are meant to serve as guidance for healthy eating patterns throughout the life cycle. The focus of the guidelines is disease prevention and health promotion. The Dietary Guidelines is not a quick read. In fact, it consists of over 150 pages. There are 6 chapters in the Dietary Guideline. The first is Nutrition and Health Across the Lifespan, the Guidelines and Key Recommendations. The second is Infant and Toddlers. The third is Children and Adolescents. Fourth is Adults. Fifth is Women who are pregnant and lactating. And what we will focus on today is Chapter 6, Older Adults. Keep in mind there is no one-size-fits-all description of an older adult, and there are many situations in which nutrition guidance is completely different. Examples could include chronic medical conditions, cancer, or unintentional weight loss. The Dietary Guidelines is meant to provide a framework and some guidance on how you can eat healthier as you age. As you age, total daily calorie requirements change. Page 125 of the Dietary Guidelines has a table with information based on calorie needs. For example, females would require about 1,600 to 2,200 calories per day, and males aged 60 and older would require about 2,000 to 2,600 calories per day. The guidelines break down recommendations for each food group. The amount varies based on how many calories an individual person requires. For example, someone needing 2,000 calories per day should aim for 2.5 cups of vegetables, 2 cups of fruit, 6 ounces of grains, 3 cups of dairy, 5.5 ounces of protein, and 27 grams of fats and oils. How about some good news? According to the Dietary Guidelines Healthy Eating Index score, diet quality is highest among older adults compared to any other ages. However, they only scored a 63 out of 100. So consistent with the general U.S. population, this age group is not meeting the recommendations for food groups and nutrient intakes. As a general group, older adults can benefit from eating more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and dairy. There are several additional nutrients that are more likely to be underconsumed during this life stage. They include dietary protein, vitamin B12, and beverages, primarily as it relates to hydration status. Protein was one of the special considerations listed in the Dietary Guidelines for older adults. The guidelines recognize that protein is an important nutrient to prevent the loss of muscle with aging. Older adults ages 71 and older consume less protein than older adults ages 60 to 70. Approximately 50% of women ages 71 and older do not eat enough protein, and approximately 30% of men ages 71 and older do not eat enough protein. Foods high in protein include meat, poultry, eggs, beans, and lentils. It's important to include these in your diet every single day. Another special considerations for older adults listed in the Dietary Guidelines is vitamin B12. The guidelines recognize that some older adults are unable to adequately absorb vitamin B12. Foods high in vitamin B12 include fortified cereals, beef, milk, yogurt, eggs, chicken, clams, liver, salmon, and tuna. Older adults should get half of their vitamin B12 through fortified foods or supplements. A multivitamin can also be used to meet these needs. The third special consideration discussed in the guidelines is beverages. Along with eating healthy foods from each of the food groups, drinking plenty of fluids is also important. Many older adults fail to drink enough fluid and experience dehydration. Older adults drink the least number of fluids compared to any other age group. There are several options, along with water, to support fluid intake to prevent dehydration while also helping to achieve adequate intake from each food group. These include choosing unsweetened beverages, 100% fruit juice, 100% vegetable juice, low-fat or fat-free milk, fortified beverages, or nutritional supplements. The dietary guidelines also list foods to limit. They include added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium. In general, older adults consume too much of all of these. Here are the recommendations per the dietary guidelines. Limit total calories of added sugars to 10%. Limit total calories from saturated fat to 10%. And limit sodium to 2,300 milligrams daily. The dietary guidelines recognizes there are additional factors to consider when supporting healthy eating for older adults. This includes enjoyment of food, ability to chew or swallow foods, and food safety. Sharing meals with friends and family can help increase food enjoyment and promote adequate intake. Good dental health, as well as textures that are acceptable, appealing, and enjoyable, also promote adequate intake. And due to the decline in immune system function as we age, this particular group is at risk for foodborne illnesses. So practicing safe food handling procedures is of particular importance for older adults. Physical activity is also important in older adults. Keep in mind, some is better than none, and anything is better than nothing. Regular physical activity helps prevent muscle loss with aging. The recommendations for older adults include 150 to 300 minutes of moderate aerobic exercises per week, 2 days of muscle strengthening exercises, and balance training. Physical activity in older adults improves quality of life. It can make it easier to complete everyday tasks, remain independent, and reduce the risk of falls and fall-related injuries. By making better food choices and increasing physical activity, all Americans across the life cycle can improve health. The guidelines were written to encourage all Americans to start and maintain a healthy eating routine, regardless of age. Take a look at the full 2020 to 2025 guidelines at www.dietaryguidelines.gov. Let's take a short quiz to review what we've learned about the dietary guidelines for older adults. Question number 1. As a general group, older adults can benefit from eating more fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and what? A. Fats, B. Sweets, C. Dairy, D. Dark chocolate. The answer is C. Dairy, and this can come from milk, cheese, or yogurt. Question number 2. The following are additional nutrients that are more likely to be underconsumed during this life stage. A. Dietary protein, B. Vitamin B12, C. Beverages, or D. All of the above. The answer is D, all of the above. Dietary protein, vitamin B12, and fluids are likely to be underconsumed. Question number 3. How often are the dietary guidelines revised? A, every 5 years, B, every 3 years, C, every 10 years, or D, every 6 years. The dietary guidelines are revised A, every 5 years, and this is the 9th edition. Number 4, true or false? The dietary guidelines are developed jointly by the U.S. Department of Agriculture and the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. The answer is true. The guidelines are developed jointly by the USDA and the Department of Health and Human Services, along with expert advice from the advisory committee. Question number 5, true or false? The dietary guidelines recommend limiting added sugars, saturated fat, and sodium. True. Remember, the guidelines recommend limiting added sugar to 10%, saturated fat to 10%, and sodium to 2,300 milligrams daily. If you would like more information about our in-service training programs or consulting dietitian services, please contact us at 1-800-761-9200 or nutritioncaresystems.com.